With me today, I have a brand new 2020 Kia Soul. Now for this 2020 model year, the Soul went through a complete redesign. It is now much bigger, it's longer, wider, taller, there's more space on the inside, more cargo room, and of course you have more standard safety features and standard features overall. But on the outside, it still has that familiar boxy shape. So is this the best subcompact SUV slash hatchback you could buy today? Well, keep watching and find out. The outside of the new Soul is still familiar, yet it's a lot more aggressive than ever before. Look at those angry headlights, which on this GT line is LED, and look at those LED fog lights below. All trims get a huge open grille on the lower bumper, but each trim has its own unique look. With most trims, you either have some black cladding on the bottom or around the wheel fenders, but on this GT line, everything is painted. It's hard to tell, but the Soul gained 1.2 inches in wheelbase, 2.2 inches in length versus the last model. Also, ground clearance is up to 6.7 inches, which is about an inch higher. These 18-inch wheels that you see here are GT line exclusive. The back of the Soul is boxier and has some unique looking LED taillights that wrap around with black trim. It almost kind of looks like a helmet of a stormtrooper. The dual chrome exhaust tips underneath are also exclusive to the GT line. Inside the trunk, you get 24 cubic feet of storage, which is a decent amount. You have some speakers on the right and a 12V outlet on the left. Spare tire and tools are underneath the bottom cover. There's no hidden storage anywhere. Inside this GT line, you have a mix of leatherette material along with cloth inserts. They look and feel pretty good, and you do have some red stitching also for some pop, and they match really well with the red trim pieces on the door panels. You can fold the seats down for more cargo room, but passengers in the rear only receive one USB port. That's it for amenities. Up front, the cabin has a sports car vibe and has a really nice looking steering wheel, dash, and overall design. The leather-wrapped steering wheel has a good feel, and the flat bottom and red stitching makes it look really sharp. Buttons on the right control the smart cruise control and infotainment screen. Buttons on the left is for the radio, phone, volume, and voice control. Now, the info screen in the gauge cluster has a lot of useful things, including your safety features, settings, trip computer, trans temperature, which is important, and I'll talk about that later during the drive. Buttons to the left of the steering wheel, you can control the heads-up display, traction control, engine auto start-stop, lane assist, and blind spot warning. The heads-up display pops out of the dash, and information is displayed on that screen rather than being shown on the windshield. Moving to the infotainment screen, this GT line is equipped with a 10.3-inch screen, while other trims get a 7-inch screen. The screen is bright, responsive, and overall pretty easy to use. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are both standard. Now on the bottom, you have some buttons to control the screen for quick navigation, and you have a volume and scroll knob. Here's a quick look of the backup camera. It's not the full entire screen, but you can adjust the contrast and brightness to your liking. The resolution is also very high. Now, climate control underneath is pretty easy to use. You got 2 dials for temperature and buttons for fan speed, modes, recirculation. The GT line does come with a tray for wireless charging, and you do get 2 USB ports along with a 12V outlet underneath. Both passengers up front gets 2 levels of heated seats. You also get a heated steering wheel and a drive mode button, which allows you to select normal and sport driving. Lastly, you have a manual parking brake, dual cup holders, space under the armrest, HomeLink buttons on top, and finally a large sunroof. As for the engine and transmission, this is where it gets interesting. Every trim level other than the GT line turbo gets a 2-liter 4-cylinder that is pushing about 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque, and it is mated to a CVT transmission. However, with the GT line turbo, it gets a 1.6-liter turbo engine pushing 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. This engine is mated to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. All right, let's go for a drive. Let's see how the Soul is on the roads. All right, I'm off. So first impression is when I first received this Soul from Kia, I got in, I went for a test drive. Immediately, I was impressed by a lot of things, and that's because
a few weeks ago, I just reviewed the brand new Kia Telluride, and I was super impressed and blown away by that SUV. It really stood out. And many things from the Telluride now carried over into the Soul. For example, let's start with the steering wheel. The steering wheel has this really nice leather feel. Not only does it look great, it's very sporty, flat bottom, the red stitching, but this leather feels really good. It just feels good. It has the right texture, the right, I guess the right heft, the right bolstering. Everything about it is good, and this feels exactly like the one in the Telluride. So I really like this steering wheel, and I like the look of it. Also, this infotainment screen, this 10.3-inch infotainment screen, this was pulled over, exactly the same size. Now, I will say this one seems to be a little bit laggier. So when I'm scrolling through, it does seem like there's a slight lag to it, and I didn't get that in the Telluride. So I don't know if this is exactly the same unit, but it is the same screen, same graphics. That means it's very high res, very bright, and I like the dual interface where you can have maps and something else on the side. I like that a lot. Something else is the shifter. So I'm really glad that Kia, just like Toyota, is sticking with a traditional shifter. They're not doing buttons like Honda or rotary knobs like Ford. They're sticking with a traditional shifter, and it is covered in the same leather that is, you know, wrapped around the steering wheel, and I like it. And it looks good, it feels good. So there's a lot of cues in here from a much more expensive SUV that was carried over and put into the Soul. In terms of the gauge cluster, the menu items, this info screen, you could tell it's high res, just like the infotainment system, and you get a lot of useful information in there. A lot of things that you could turn on or off in regards to your door, your lights, your heads-up display, your driver assistant features. You know what? Yeah, very impressive. I have a ton of headroom, a ton of legroom, even shoulder room. I don't feel like this is narrow at all. This is very wide. And also in the second row, same thing. I had a good 4 to 5 inches of legroom left in a subcompact SUV. And plus the seats, even though they were not adjustable, the seat back was at a good angle, so I felt very comfortable leaning back. And again, I have plenty of headroom and shoulder and hip room. So in terms of space, it's pretty darn impressive in here. Now, because the Soul still retains that boxy shape, the good thing about it is the way the windows are and the door panels. Door panels sit nice and low. The windows are big square windows, and because of it, visibility is fantastic. Front windshield is huge. I can see over the hood. Side windows, everything is good. Even the blind spot back there, very minimal. The C-pillar, there's a small little window over there, so I mean everything back there I could see. Plus the back window. The back window is enormous, and the headrests almost do not block it in any way, like barely blocking the corners. All right, now let me test out acceleration. I'm gonna go into sport mode, and I'm not gonna use the paddle shifters. I'm just gonna see how it is normally. So of course this is the turbo engine with a 7-speed dual clutch. Whoa. Oh man, the front wheels were chirping. I was slipping. Man, that was a lot of get-go right off the bat. Now I will say afterwards, after it got to about 40 miles per hour, then it kind of slowed down. But 0 to 40, man, that was quick. In terms of this class, this subcompact SUV class, nothing comes close. Nothing comes close, because that's one of the biggest drawbacks to subcompact or even compact SUVs. The manufacturers limit the power because they want you to upgrade. And I remember the HR-V was, oh my God, it was so slow. And the other ones were just barely adequate. This engine is pretty darn amazing. This is a pretty pretty fast car. I will say that the steering feels quite heavy. If you're driving around Walmart, Target, tighter parking spots, right, all the time, it might get a little bit tiring because of it, because the steering is quite heavy. However, once you get up to speed, this is really good. It makes you feel like you're connected to the soul, like you're driving something special. And in terms of play, almost none. You guys can see slight play like this, but a little bit beyond that, and I could feel it in the car. Now, because this is a GT line, the suspension is tuned to be a little bit stiffer, more sporty, so you can carve the corners a little bit easier. Now, on normal roads, I would say the bigger dips and bumps, I do feel a little bit more, but overall, it's still a very controlled and comfortable ride. In terms of the brakes, the brake pedal is a little bit stiffer. Okay, my engine just turned off, so I'm turning it back on. Engine auto start stop, that is on here, so if you want to turn that off, the button's right to the left of the steering wheel. Now, in terms of the brake pedal, it's a little bit stiff, so you do have to give it a bit more pressure, and the brakes do catch on fairly quickly, so you just got to get used to that. Now, in terms of safety features, you got almost everything. You get lane keep system, you got blind spot monitoring, pre-collision with pedestrian detection, rear cross traffic alert. You get this smart radar cruise control. So basically every safety feature you could think of is in here. Now, something that's bad that I experienced, and I also read about this, is this 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Sometimes at low speeds, it's erratic and you feel like there's a loss of power, there's hesitation, and I know exactly what causes that. It's the transmission temperature. So I started digging and looking at what other people have said, and sure enough, I looked at a Car and Driver article, and whoever reviewed the Soul also said the same thing, that the 7-speed had its mind of its own, and it was hesitant at low speeds. But then I started digging around, and I'm wondering why they have a transmission temperature feature or info inside the info screen. Now, granted, probably they put it there to make you feel like, oh, okay, if you're tracking the car or something, you want to keep track of your transmission temperature. But what's also useful is you can look at that, because now, when I first started driving, that temperature gauge was at like 1 dot, basically the lowest it could be. And I felt a lot of that hesitation when it was cold. Unfortunately though, it took me 30 minutes of driving, right, to get to a second layer of, I guess, temperature, second degree, however that's marked. And then I felt like that got a little better. Now I'm on the 3rd level, and that completely gone away. That no longer exists when I'm doing stop and go right now. So I think that has 100% to do with the transmission and the temperature it's at. So unfortunately though, you're driving in cold weather, you're going to experience that right off the bat, because even if you do remote start or you heat up your car, the transmission really does not heat up for a long time. I had to drive for 45 minutes before it got to the level where it is now. Now, this model does have a heads-up display. Unfortunately though, it's not as good as the one in the Telluride. The Telluride just displays it on the windshield. This one has a pop-up screen, which looks fancy, but it's just too low. And everything in there is not as big, it's a little bit blurrier. And when you're looking at it, you're looking at like downwards. Even though you could adjust, the pop-up screen is only so high. So when you're sitting up, you're actually looking down on your hood to see it. So unfortunately, the heads-up display, it is available, but it's not that good. These seats are actually really good. They're a combination. It's not all leather. It's kind of like leather on the sides, and I'm not even sure if they're leather or some kind of pleather alternative, but it does look good, it feels good, and the inside is cloth, and it's bolstered well. It's not too narrow. On my back, I can feel it, and it's holding me in really well, and the bottom cushion is also comfortable.
As for the price, the base LX starts around $17,500, and then you have the S after that. Then you have the GT line without the turbo engine. Next, you have the X line, which actually has more rugged cues. Then you have the EX, and finally you have the GT line with the turbo engine, which starts around $27,500. Now let's talk about the good and bad to this brand new Kia Soul. Starting with the good, it has a funky and modern exterior look, tons of interior room and decent cargo room. The cabin quality and infotainment is top notch. The Soul provides very fast acceleration, especially for this class. There's tons of features not available with others. And you have good seats that hold you in, and you get a good driving position. As for the bad, there's no all-wheel drive option available. The powerful engine and transmission combo is only with the GT line turbo trim. Unfortunately, you get jerky and unpredictable shifting with the transmission when cold. There's a bit of lag with the infotainment screen, and finally there's no air vents in the second row. To conclude, the 2020 Kia Soul GT Line Turbo is miles ahead of the competition when it comes to features, standard safety features, space, quality, and acceleration. However, the dual clutch transmission when cold at low speeds hinders the driving experience. Hopefully the CVT does a better job. I'm giving the brand new Soul a score of 92. To see how it stacks against the competition, check out driversonlyrankings.com. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and check out these other videos.